Well, the F1, the latest edition of F1 Sprint Weekends is in the books, and if you were looking forward to something that would be very exciting, that was very, enthralling, that was had you on the edge of your seats, well, you did get that. But funnily enough, you didn't quite get that at the front of the grid because Max Verstappen took what was probably his easiest sprint win till date. He finished ahead of both Ferraris, with Charles Leclerc finishing in second place, Carlos Sainz in third, and George Russell of Mercedes, who started the race in fourth and finishes in fourth. That means that he will be starting the race on the second grid tomorrow. So obviously good for him in that sense. Sergio Perez, by the way, had quite the drive because remember he started in 13th place and then ended up shooting up all the way into fifth place. So very good race from him, and you'd be tempted to think that he could have gotten ahead even further if the sprint was a little longer. But such is the format of the sprint. It's short, it's sweet. This one was very sweet, but as I said, the action wasn't quite up there in the front of the field, because if you, like me, were watching the sprint, then you would have realized that most of the action or most of the focus of the main cameras was on the battle going on between Mick Schumacher and Lewis Hamilton, that was going on for 8th and 9th respectively. And I have to say it was very exciting to watch, not just due to the fact that Mick Schumacher was doing quite well to keep Hamilton at bay, but the fact that Haas were using both their cars very, very effectively. If you're watching the race, you'll notice that there were times when Schumacher was cutting off one line and his teammate Kevin Magnussen was cutting off the other, and thus preventing Hamilton from actually attempting an overtake from the outside line. Of course, in the end, that strategy, it wasn't able to hold Hamilton at bay, and he took 8th place. And as we know, that 8th place spot, of course, means that he'll start the race at 8th tomorrow on the grid, but it also means that he gets that 1 point, because for the sprint race there are points awarded if you go from from first to 8. Drivers are awarded, so if you finish first you get 8 points, finish second you get 7 points, third 6 points, and all the way down to 8th you get 1 point. So obviously there's drivers championship points at stake as well. Mick Schumacher would count himself a little bit unlucky to miss out on that point towards the end, but again, 7th and 9th is very good for the Haas team in that sense, so they had a very good race. And I think if we're talking about, Max Verstappen, this is not the first time he's won a sprint. In fact, it's the third time that he's ended up winning a sprint race like this. So he's a bit used to then taking pole position or starting the race from the front when it comes to these sprint weekends. But what was interesting to see in that regard was that most of the action was taking place at the back part of the midfield, you can say, because the front two, again, we were talking, I did mention yesterday, if you watched my preview, I had said that Ferrari need to take a call on who will be their first driver. That didn't quite happen this time around, because you could see both the Ferraris were consistently looking to race each other. That played exactly into Verstappen's hands, because Charles Leclerc, instead of focusing his efforts on trying to catch Verstappen, was having to focus his efforts in keeping Carlos Sainz at bay. So obviously not very ideal, and the Scuderia do need to sort that out sooner rather than later. They need to make a choice of who's going to be their first driver. They haven't quite done that yet, and it's costing them the Drivers' Championship, because Red Bull and Verstappen are just running away with it at this point. Now, obviously, we've spoken about the ones who had a good sprint race. There were a few who was a sprint race to forget. Guan Yu Zhou, unfortunately, his car ended up stalling just before the start, which necessitated the start of another formation lap. So due to that, he had to start the race from the pit lane, and he's only finishing the race P14. So not the best of places to be starting, especially if you're Alfa Romeo. You know for a fact that's a decent enough car to be fighting for points. 14, though, not an ideal place to be starting. His teammate Valtteri Bottas starting 10th. But the other person who would be disappointed with how that sprint went would, of course, be Fernando Alonso, because remember, he had to retire from the sprint. Never mind, it did not finish. He couldn't even start the race because there were some engine issues with his car. So due to that, he wasn't able to get going in the sprint at all. And that was a bit disappointing, because the Alpines did show some genuine pace. Again, Esteban Ocon is starting the race, a respectable P6. So that's obviously a good place, and the Alpines do have some decent degree of pace. Unfortunately for Alonso and them, it didn't come together this time around. But again, these sort of things happen, and I'm pretty sure that Alonso would be fancying his chances tomorrow, even though he'd be starting from the back of the grid. He's starting 20th because, again, as I said, he didn't start the race. But we might just get to see a few interesting overtakes from him in that regard tomorrow. So obviously that would be interesting to watch, fun to watch. I don't know about you guys, but I'm definitely very, very excited about getting to watch the race tomorrow as well. So, because as I said, Austria is just one of those circuits. You do get plenty of overtaking, you do get plenty of overtaking chances, but it's also a tough and demanding track. Has all the ingredients for a good race. Whether or not that'll be a competitive race, well, that's something that we'll only get to know tomorrow, because for that, Ferrari need to kind of sort out their team issues. And if that happens, then maybe, just maybe, we'd see Verstappen challenging. But as things stand, I'm predicting a very, very easy win for one Max Verstappen, which would doubtless send the Dutch fans over there who are home pretty happy. So that's it for this particular, this bit of our F1 coverage. Again, thank you guys so much for joining us. If you enjoy what it is that we do, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, tap the bell icon so that you know every single time we're going live. Share these videos with your friends. Thanks again for joining us. As always, I'm Shane Rice, and I'm going to be seeing you for halftime analysis of the India-England match very, very soon, in a few minutes, in fact. So, bye-bye for now.